Now, Sports Talk with Brodes. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. The 76ers win in overtime, and it's a huge win. Now, some have asked me, Brodes, where have you been in regards to the Sixers? And I'm going to be honest with you. This team has been somewhat boring to me over the last handful of games, and that's a product of the NBA late into a season. When they play the Milwaukee Bucks without Ben Simmons and without Joel Embiid and they get murdered, what am I supposed to say? When they play an Atlanta Hawks team when nobody's available and they win by 30 plus, what am I supposed to say? Now, they did it when Trae Young was available and when they did get a few guys back, but there's really still nothing to say. This team is what it is. You know what this team is by now. Tonight was a big win. Why? Because the Brooklyn Nets lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, and a victory would put you in first place again. So it is very valuable, and it's important. It was ugly. There's no denying that a beat-down Spurs team should never take you to overtime. They were not mentally prepared. They thought it would be a snooze fest because it has been over the last handful of games for this team. They've been handling business and doing it quite easily, so they probably mentally just expected to do that again tonight, and that wasn't the case. But they got the win, and I guess that's the most important thing at the end of the day. Ben Simmons, of all people, who flat out sucked all game offensively. He had two good defensive plays late, right? Like he sets his feet and gets a good charge late. He made defensive plays late and gets that tip in. But, man, he was egregious offensively throughout the night. So why wouldn't it be Ben Simmons to be that guy to tap it in? Now, I'm not going to sit here and rip him into shreds because he has been a good player as of late, and I haven't been here to give him the praise, so I'm not just going to peek my head in on a night where he was a disaster offensively and just rip him into shreds because that hasn't been the case over the last handful. There hasn't been much talent on the other side over the last handful, but I digress. That's not neither here or there. Either here nor there. Is that the right phrase? I have no idea. All I know is I'm ready for some playoff basketball at this point. I'm pretty much sick and tired of this regular season garbage. When you see the lineup today, no Podol, no Murray, no DeRozan. Here we go again. Now, at least this was a little more exciting just because it was close. It wasn't a good product by any means. Their transition defense is actually a major concern for me for the postseason. That's something that I've seen throughout this regular season, and I think when we talk about certain playoff losses, you are going to acknowledge their transition D being so poor. Here's what makes me feel just some minor optimism that it won't be as much of an issue. Their half-court defense is lethal, and you're going to see way more half-court sets, way more half-court possessions where this up-and-down flow in a regular season game, it's not going to be as fast-paced, so maybe it won't be as much of a problem, as much of an issue. That's me looking optimistic. It doesn't mean it's going to be reality. Like, in theory, you won't see it as much, but because there's less possessions, when you do see it, the impact will be stronger. So because it's so possession by possession, because it's so dribble by dribble, instead of, I'm just randomly throwing numbers out here. I'm not being too specific. But if in a regular season game, there's 15 possessions where you are horrendous with your transition defense, in a playoff game, 6 horrendous possessions with bad transition defense will have a stronger impact, even though it's not as many as a fast-paced LA Fitness regular season game, if that makes sense. But that's a problem. And you also saw stretching out Joel Embiid. Teams are going to do that. Now, not every team has the ability to stretch out the floor as well as other teams. We know the Milwaukee Bucks can do it, and that's why getting the first seed, escaping the Milwaukee Bucks, would be monstrous for this team. Going up against the Bucks, when you have Brook Lopez, when you have Bobby Portis, when they can set their centers out and really stretch out Joel, that causes this team problems, and you definitely saw that tonight against the Spurs. I watched Lonnie Walker out there getting buckets. It was ridiculous, Like Seth Curry was fun, though. He was splashing threes, and when he has one of those nights where he's cruising and he's drilling his shots, he's fun, man. He's fun when he's confident and he's on that specific night. He's dialed in. Seth Curry is amazing to watch. I didn't like some things late, though. I didn't personally like Doc Rivers and the last possession with Joel Embiid. There are some who cover the team that have been defending it. Look, you gave Joel Embiid the ball in his hands, late possession, go make a bucket. Go score. I think he settled, though. He settled for a shot that he probably could have got a better look. I hated the travel call in overtime. What in the world was that? Out of all the travels that we see in the NBA, you're going to give that call at that point in time in overtime to Joel Embiid? That's an absolute disgrace. But Ben Simmons came up big. This is a different possession I'm talking about. That was late overtime. But when Joel missed the shot that Ben put in, that's another shot where, it's not maybe the cleanest, smoothest look out of Joel, but teams are going to swarm your best player because their philosophy is going to be, we're not going to allow Joel to get the cleanest look in the world, to take the best shot available. We're going to swarm him and force him to chuck something up. And if he makes it, fine. If he doesn't, well, let's hope Ben Simmons doesn't come in with a tap-in. But I just find it hilarious that the outrage towards Ben all night was, dude, what the hell are you doing? You're going up against a team that has nobody available. Eubanks is the other guy out there. Really? You can't fly by a team that's rocking Eubanks out there? What are you doing? And here he is sitting in the dunker spot of all places, just giving it a good little how do you do. He came alive late with bigger moments, and defense is what he thrives at. And he did set his feet and take some really nice charges late that were extremely valuable to getting this team back on track. And here's another guy that stunk when it came to offensive production, but came up with big plays in the fourth quarter and made some plays by the glass in the fourth quarter. Danny Green. And there's a correlation between the type of winner Danny Green is and his resume and his championship rings and Danny Green the player. There's a reason why he does all these little things that matter so much, where it might not be his best, but then he provides it in a certain area at a specific time, timely things. The difference between him and Ben Simmons, though, is, well, I think it's pretty clear. Ben Simmons and his flaw, well, there's no reason to do that. I did hear Doc Rivers after the game talk about the second unit, though, and the ISO ball, and there were so many moments he thought that the second unit was just out there to try and do too much, and that was a downfall of this team tonight, which, yeah, no doubt about it. When we talk about Dwight Howard, though, Dwight Howard, he's in that stretch of good energy. He just goes through these stretches of great play and then horrendous, brutal play. Right now, he's back with the explosion. He's back with the rebounds. He's back with the big-time dunks. He's flying. He looks like he's 23 years old. He's bringing that jam. He's taking strides towards the basket. You got yourself Dwight Howard and looking like he's in his prime again. That's the version of Dwight Howard you're kind of seeing at the moment, and it's definitely fun to watch. That's for damn sure. You just wonder how long it's going to last and at what point does it turn back into ugliness. But the thing that keeps coming up is that stretch five conversation. I don't know Dwight Howard's value when you see a team in the playoffs that will stretch you out insanely. And we talked about this prior, but I'll resurface it again because I think maybe some of the dialogue has changed. One of my problems was, so let's say you put Ben Simmons at the 5, because it might not be perfect, but it might be a better option than Dwight Howard at times. But I needed Ben Simmons to also play stretch 4 when Tobias Harris went to the bench. How will he do all of it? Well, enter Matisse Thybulle being able to actually defend 4s better as of late. He might not be perfect, but he might be able to hold his own for a limited amount of minutes. And he might not even technically be able to hold his own, but if he does go up against a guy that is a scary weapon, well, that scary weapon is going to probably score on any other options you had out there anyway. So if you need someone just to give a rest to Tobias for a handful of minutes, or a rest to Ben Simmons for or whatever the case may be, you got Matisse Thybulle there now as your stretch forward. It seems like something that they can utilize. I'm not saying they definitely will and it will be automatic. It's going to be matchup based. But the fact that you can slot him in there can open up the door for Ben to be that 5-position defender if Joel goes to the bench and you got more versatility involved. So, that changes things for sure. It just depends. I'm just so curious to see when Doc Rivers is going to enter Dwight Howard compared to a Ben Simmons, or, what he's going to do at the 5, and when Dwight's going to play, when Dwight's not going to play, and how it's going to go down. You're seeing George Hill just get more comfortable as the games go on. A few games ago, Seth Curry was getting abused, and there were a lot of question marks surrounding, is Seth Curry going to be a starter, or are you going to have to slot George Hill in there? I've been consistent on this. We have seen the starting 5 be the starting 5 when they've been healthy. Now, being the starting 5 and then down the stretch in the fourth quarter, two totally different things. You can start Seth Curry and then maybe not have Seth Curry out there if it's one of those games where the matchup is just going to rock him and defensively he's getting waxed and he's also not shooting very well that night. If he's 1 for 5 and then whoever he's playing up against is picking on him and attacking that mismatch consistently, pretty much majority of the possessions, then you enter George Hill in the fourth quarter, and you still technically start Seth Curry. It just changes as you need more buckets, and things are going to have to be a chess match. You're going to have to make those moves if you're Doc Rivers. There was a few games ago there where he was getting constantly attacked, and it seemed like, hey, maybe Seth Curry is, that guy that you pull out of that lineup when you need to enter George Hill. I did see one lineup that was interesting. That the problem is defensively it gets murdered, but it's George Hill, Seth Curry, Shake Milton, Thybulle, Howard. Is that a playoff rotation type of thing? Probably not. But what it gives you is George Hill, Seth Curry, and Shake Milton. It gives you an interesting dynamic with those crafty skill sets offensively. What it can do, though, is cause you monster problems defensively. So I don't know what that means. It's just something that stood out to me. That's all. I'm not saying it's powerful. I'm not saying it's incredibly insane. I'm not going out on a limb and telling you that's the lineup they're going to use in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals to bring you to the championship. But I'm telling you that there was something that stood out to me in this game against a banged-up team in the Spurs, or just, I just saw that they were out. I didn't honestly even see what they were listed with, or if there is anything serious between those three, if it's just a load management thing. I honestly have no idea what's going on with their players that did not play tonight, but that was something that was noticeable for sure. We talked about Ben Simmons' issues offensively, and free throws was bad and whatnot. But I saw Kyle Neubeck, specifically, a Philly voice, and I think he does such a tremendous job covering this team, and I thoroughly enjoy reading his pieces. One of the things he didn't like was the fact that when Ben does struggle, they play through Ben offensively to try and get him going a bit, and his approach to it, or his mindset is, why do that? Why do that? If it's not working, it's not working. That's fine. Why do that, though? And I understand where he's coming from. I do. It's not as if Ben Simmons is this phenomenal offensive player where, hey, let's continue to pound him low in the paint and let's continue to work the offense through him back to the basket and try and get some sort of explosion offensively. Let's try and produce points offensively through Ben. That's not what his game is all about, and quite frankly, he's not the best option to do it, so I force it. I understand where you're coming from, and now is probably not the time to experiment with things and look for the growth of certain players. Ben is what he is. In terms of this run for the playoffs, there's nothing that's going to change out of Ben from what you've seen. If we're talking Game 10, Game 12, Game 14, Game 22, maybe a different conversation, but as of today, nothing is going to be significantly different, so I see that. At the same time, though, how do you expect someone to get better unless you put them in situations? Ben, we need you here, dude. Ben, we got to get you here, dude. Ben, you got to get his points, man. It's sort of like we don't want Doc to be too soft. We saw Brett Brown be too soft until he came out publicly to the media and Ben Simmons somewhat spit in his face and laughed at him and didn't do it ever since he said that. Whatever, Ben doesn't do it anyway, but regardless, this might be Doc's mentality of, I'm forcing him to do it. Ben, we have to get more offense from you. We're running through you, and you're going to excel, and you're going to succeed. Now, ultimately, that was not the case. Is that the approach, though, at a Doc, and can you necessarily knock it if he's trying to get that next layer out of him? If it's not so much something for this season and more so just the growth of Ben Simmons in general, maybe that's what Doc Rivers is doing. I'm just looking at it with the other side here. I'm just looking at the other side of the glass. Tobias Harris, he struggled in the fourth. He struggled in some moments for sure where it was head scratching and it was almost cringe worthy out of Tobias. Not so much everything, though. There were some really beautiful passes. There was some really nice, believe it or not, some pick and roll play with Joel Embiid as well, where you saw the patience in Tobias. So you were able to kind of see just like this different element where waiting for Joel, and Joel and him were perfectly timed together where, hey, Joel's cutting and Joel's rolling, and here's Tobias with the patience waiting for the right moments. You saw some of that. You saw some really great passes, but unfortunately there were so many disastrous moments that I saw as well that somewhat made me, at the end of the day, look at Tobias with a, dude, really? That's what we're kind of getting out of Tobias Harris tonight? Oof. With Joel, he scored 34 points, 13 of 23, and he probably, especially early, could have just continued to roll for however many points he wanted to, like real early. But who can stop him? When you see a team like the Spurs, and it's crazy because in this game, the Spurs were, it just seemed like the Sixers were exploding early, right? Just taking a big lead. First quarter, took control. And then the Spurs held in there. And then the Spurs were just staying in range. And I never truly felt that it was going to be damaging. I thought maybe at the end I would talk. Because when I watch a game, I think about what I'm going to talk about, right? And with the Sixers, I was thinking, okay, they could never truly put the Spurs away, but they were never in true danger. It was just a 10-point lead, a 12-point lead, an 8-point lead. But they did enough to hold on and keep that separation the way that they needed to. Well, I was wrong because the tie game did happen and they allowed some bucket. Was it Rudy Gay? Rudy Gay made a stop, or at least had the ball after a big stop, and the Spurs could have had a big possession offensively. He tried to pass it. He passed it out of bounds, which resulted in a turnover. Then the Sixers got the ball. They ended up scoring, if I remember correctly, it was Joel Embiid who hit a mid-range J, and then Rudy Gay ends up going back the other way and attacking the rim, getting a layup off the glass. It hits the rim. It goes in, and I don't know where I was going with that at all. Oh, yes. We were talking about how it was closer than we thought, but we figured the Sixers would stay in that comfortable range of 10 or 8, but it snowballed out of control, and the Spurs were making some buckets there late, but they got the win, and it was ugly. It definitely wasn't pretty. It was ugly, but they got the win. And how about Doc Rivers with a challenge late with that Joel Embiid shot? That was monstrous, right? That's huge. You're talking game-changing for him to utilize that the right way and nail it and get them to overturn the call. So let's not pretend like that wasn't big. That was huge. For sure that was huge. All right, why don't we get to the anytime hotline? Yeah, why don't we do that? Before we do, listen, if you are ready to ask the question, pop the question, get an engagement ring,
Go to DeSimone Jewelers in Haddonfield, New Jersey. I went there, and it was the best experience of my life. They used to be in Jewelers Row. Then they moved here in South Jersey to Haddonfield, New Jersey, and it is beautiful. They treat you like family. You walk in, hey, man, what's going? They shoot the shop with you. They talk sports. Joel Embiid did this last night, man. It's just a family-like atmosphere. They sit you down. They educate you. They don't treat you like you're just a customer. They treat you like family. Been there for my engagement ring. I went back for Christmas. I went there for birthdays. Every single time I'm buying something for my fiance to get her a new piece of jewelry, it's DeSimone Jewelers. And why is that? Well, because they customize and manufacture every ring they make from start to finish right there on location. Because of that, they beat competitors' prices. True story. One of my buddies got an engagement ring elsewhere. We were talking about things. I'm like, dude, you paid that for that? No. Come to my guy. And it was, all right, we're returning the original. You should see what he got in return. I mean, it's just crazy what they can do. I've sent so many family members in their direction, and I get the same response. Brodes, they're amazing. And you'll say the same thing when you walk in there and you tell them that Brodes sent you. Check out their information. It's all down below. All right, here we go. Let's go to the Anytime Hotline after this victory.
What's going on, Brodes? Big win for the Sixers, but not a good win for the Sixers. Big in terms of that they got the number 1 seed back. Hope they can keep it. But, they did not play with a lot of effort tonight. Ben Simmons, he was so bad on the offense. Luckily, he had his best play when it actually counted, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve a shit ton of criticism for this game. Joel Embiid did Joel Embiid things, just couldn't hit it at the end of regulation and the end of overtime, but luckily Ben was able to tip that one in. Tobias Harris, not a very good game for him. On to Chicago.
On to Chicago is right. And it's funny you brought up Tobias because my brain instantly went there when you talked about Joel not being able to make some of those shots late. And if Tobias was on and he was having one of his better nights, maybe you don't rely on Joel to be taking those shots when the defenders come and swarm him. And I'm not saying they're the most egregious shots ever in the world, ever. I didn't love them. I think it was more of settling than it was. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy when, keep in mind, Ben Simmons doesn't shoot. Tobias Harris is off that night. It's not very easy to just get Joel Embiid to have this significant, wide open, insane, huge look. Teams know that's what you're trying to get. So especially a coach like Greg Popovich is going to sniff that out. Not that it's that hard to sniff out, but he's going to do his best to make sure that Joel Embiid took the type of shots that he took tonight, and he would live with that. Greg Popovich would live with that. But how would things change if this was a night where Toby was 10 of 14? Or if Toby was dropping 26 points, 24 points with very effective efficiency? You probably would see different plays down the stretch and a different level of intensity out of the offense would be my guess. In terms of criticizing Ben Simmons, you can absolutely criticize Ben Simmons. A tip-in against a team like the Spurs when they were playing this undermanned in overtime after having that slop at the line, after having no points, essentially. I call it no points, all game long. Yes. So we're just going to pretend like the 48 minutes don't matter that he played on that side of the floor because of one tip-in? I mean, that's outrageous. That's asinine. So, yeah, you absolutely can rip apart Ben Simmons, for sure. And there are a lot of Ben stands out there that won't allow that. And I love this, right? Like, somehow all of a sudden I hate Ben Simmons. No, of course not. I love Ben Simmons. I love him so much that I hold him to a high standard. I think he's got so much in him that I demand more out of him because I know it's in there. So I'm rooting for Ben. I'm a huge Ben Simmons guy. I've always been a big-time supporter of Ben Simmons. He drives me crazy. Why does he drive me crazy? Because I care so much. You know, I've been called maybe obsessed with Ben. You're obsessed with Ben, Brodes. You're obsessed with him. Yeah. Because this is one of the most bizarre stories in all of basketball. Truly. Seriously. We're talking about a guy who is an all-star in this league. And not that it's crazy to be an all-star, because it's not. There's tiers of all-stars, right? Your LeBrons, your Damian Lillards, your Steph Currys, your Kevin Durants. And then there's your Kemba Walkers, your bottom tier all-stars. So I'm not saying just being an all-star is this, just an epic thing. Because it's not. Because, there are guys that are, quote, all-stars that are not on the level of what I just mentioned, the Joel Embiids, the starters, when you talk about an all-star game. But we are witnessing someone who is an all-star that can't shoot a basketball. I mean, it's just insanity. So, yeah, I am obsessed. I'm obsessed with this because it doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't make sense. If this makes sense in your head and you come to conclusion of something and you come to mind with something out of Ben's play and it's settling to you and it satisfies you, well, then you're doing yourself a disservice. How about that? That's my mentality on it. What's next?
Well, the Sixers got the close win in the must-win scenario, but I'm not satisfied with it. I mean, Ben Simmons, he made the last bucket, but 5 points, 3 points for most of the game. I mean, that's embarrassing. Ben Simmons should be scoring way more than that, and I'm tired of it. This is what he's going to do in the playoffs. Everyone already knows it, and I mean, whatever. Maybe Joel Embiid will just have to carry us. But Ben Simmons, get your act together, bud. One shot doesn't do anything. It was tipping. Wasn't even a shot.
Wow, how about that? I'll be honest with you. I am a little surprised. And maybe I shouldn't be, so maybe it's a flaw on me. But I'm a little surprised with the Ben Simmons slander after tonight just because they won, and he has been playing a little bit better in the previous games. But when you put up that type of effort offensively, maybe I should have been more reasonable, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I should have realized that this was coming. You mentioned that, well, maybe Joel Embiid can carry this, and that's been the question all along. Will Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris and Danny Green and everybody else involved be able to carry Ben Simmons because of his problems? Well, I think you saw tonight against a team that, look, what you saw tonight is less than half of what you're going to see in a second round. Even a Knicks team, like a Knicks team compared to the Spurs team that was beat up. The Knicks are going to be 3 times that effort-wise, and maybe not effort-wise, because I think the Spurs worked hard and they battled hard, so effort might not be the right word. But with that effort plus better skill that you'd be getting out of the Knicks in the second round, if that's who you see, well then good luck. Here's my point I'm trying to make. Against the Spurs, without Toby having a good game and Ben having a good game, that's what it took you to beat them. If you don't have a good game out of Tobias and Ben, which is very possible, and you just demand Joel and Seth Curry to carry you through a team that has more talent, a team that's more ready to play, a team with superstars, a team with good depth, just a team with good work ethic, a team that screams better than the Spurs in a regular season game that isn't missing 3 guys, are you going to be able to win that game? And if you do squeeze it out, that's big because I don't expect Toby and Ben to have a bad game every single game. So if you do come out up with the win and you do come out on top in a game where Toby and Ben don't play smoothly and Joel squeaks it out and Ben has one tip in late and you end up winning that game and now you're up 2-0 in the series or 2-1 in the series, and that was the one game where they were a dumpster fire and then they both respond on that next game, well, that would be clutch, and that would be very big for the play out of the series. But I think that question is very valid. What happens if this is what you get in the postseason? How long can that carry you? And are you going to see this more times than not? I mean, my guess has always been yes, until I see it differently. Yes, why would I expect anything to change from Ben in the playoffs to now, considering nothing has changed? I expect to see what I've seen out of the last few playoff runs, which is not a lot of respect, a lot easier to double team Joel Embiid, a lot easier to bring the heat on some of these other players, and he'll just stand there. The difference is you're not going to be playing against this Spurs team this banged up in the playoffs. There'll be a different guy on Ben Simmons. And that's not to say Ben Simmons' size won't matter, because it will. The fact that you do have a 6'10 body frame hanging out there in the dunker spot could be definitely different and could change the game with a tip or something, because Ben Simmons' size is something that makes him unique, is the fact that he is 6'10. Maybe it does, but there's also a huge liability factor as well there that can't be not noted.
I can't believe that really just happened. I really can't believe that just happened. Joel missed 2 game-winning shots, but Ben wants to score 3 points the whole fucking game. And then when it comes to the final shot, he wants to make it. He needs to be better throughout the rest of the game, but at least he came up big. I'm shocked.
I'll be honest with you. When I saw it happen, I saw the tip in, I was a little, Now, I'll just tell you full out here. So I have the Xfinity app on my TV. So technically my games are streamed, which sucks because, so I don't have a cable box is what I'm saying. I have a Roku TV on all my TVs, so I use the Comcast Xfinity app, which has cable on it, which means it's delayed by maybe, I don't know, 1 possession or so. So I have to stay off my phone late in games. First, second, third quarter, I don't really care because I'm not going to be ruined that much. But late, I don't want to see anything, so I put my phone off to the side just a bit. So I watch the last couple possessions to see how it plays out without getting a notification or seeing something on Twitter. I saw Keith Pompey, who covers the Sixers for the Inquirer, of course, tweet, "Wow." So I saw wow, and I was like, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? So I see Joel Embiid take the shot. The ball hits the back iron and goes up. I'm like, wow, it ends up hitting the back iron and going back in. And then all of a sudden, I see Ben Simmons' hand out of nowhere touch it and tap it in. So I knew something was going to happen. There was a bit of me that thought when Joel missed it, was it possible that someone grabbed the rebound and chucked it the length of the court and made it in? So there was a little bit of me that was like, it ruined it because I knew something happened. I didn't know what it was. I knew something crazy happened. But for it to be Ben with the tip in, I mean, it's a big win. There's no denying that this was a big win for the team. So hopefully they continue with this 1 seed thing. I was never fully scared because when you saw the Nets have to play the Bucks and you saw the difference in schedules, you knew that the Eagles... the Sixers had an advantage there to crawl back into that 1 seed. Here's what I'll say, though. These games are just, I'm over it. I'm just flat out over it. And this is the most NBA championship caliber team we've had. And I've been saying this from the jump. When you are a team where we've never been to this level before. We've had good teams. We've had playoff teams. There's a difference between playoff teams and NBA championship caliber teams. This team is just as good as any other team in the NBA in the Eastern Conference. I was going to say to get to the NBA Finals, but the Western Conference is irrelevant because you would only see them in the finals. They're just as good as the Nets. They're just as good as the Bucks. They'll be involved in a 7-game series with any of these teams can win. They're not that far off any of these other teams for as many flaws as the Sixers have. The Bucks have flaws. The Nets have flaws. All teams have flaws, but they're all in the same mix. When you get to this level of regular season and it's this late, and realistically, it's even before that too. I mean, just the regular season doesn't matter. The regular season doesn't matter, and it's in full effect right now. I know I'm not the only one. All right, these games are just boring. They do matter in terms of the 1 seed. Entertainment value-wise, it's just not there. Get to the fucking playoffs. We know what you're all about. We've seen you play enough. We know your identity. Will it work? Will it not work? That's what we've been asking for the last 3 goddamn months. It's time to see it. So when they play, and it's just how I feel. I'm sorry. It's just how I feel. When they play the Bulls tomorrow, when they play the Rockets, when they play some of these teams that stink, the Pistons, I just don't care anymore. All right? I just don't care. I don't care. because I know what this team is. I've seen their identity. They can hang with the Nets. They can hang with the Bucks. I just want to see it already. So these final games, like, I get it. It matters because they're fighting for the 1 seed. Entertainment value-wise, I got nothing. 38-point blowouts where the bench scores and Matisse gets steals and he's got dunks and this and that. And speaking of dunks, woof, Matisse Thybulle tonight. But I don't know what to tell you. That's how I feel. And I don't know. Am I the only one? I doubt it. I've seen people all over social media kind of talking about the same thing. Before I let you go, DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use promo code Brodes. You can bet on the NBA. You can bet on over-unders for point totals for players specifically, or the total for the number of points scored in the entire game. Check it out. Sixers, you got some more action against Chicago, as I mentioned. Maybe you take them with the spread. Maybe they win the second half of the back-to-back as well. Baseball, Phillies, you can check out maybe what you got and some over-unders for the pitching strikeouts. That's one of my favorites. I see Nola on the bump. Oh, what's the over-under? Oh, 7.5. Let's bang the over. For hockey as well, there's so much. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code Brodes to enter the free... Nope, that's not a thing anymore. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code Brodes when you sign up to check out all their odds and promotion boosts. That's promo code Brodes to check out all of their odds and promotion boosts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you next time.